everyone, and welcome to Onyx Path Con 2022, the Community Content Fundamentals panel. I am Travis Legge. My pronouns are he, they. I will be the master of ceremonies, but I probably will not drop any sick rhymes because I don't want to step on Hiromi's toes. And Hiromi would smoke me like a cheap cigar in a rap battle. There's also that. But we're not here to talk about rap. We're here to rap about community content. See what I did there? So let me begin by introducing our esteemed panelists. And we will start in an arbitrary order based on what I see on my screen. So if we could, Jack, if you could please tell us who you are,
Sure.
what you do, your pronouns, and anything that you might want to share or promote or
Sure.
just tell the audience.
I'm Jack Kiser. I work for One Bookshelf. I'm a creator relations representative. My pronouns are he, him. I also work with the Storytelling Collective, and I do a lot of work with small creators for all the One Bookshelf sites, Drive Through, DM's Guild, all those fun things.
Excellent. And next up we have Alain. Please give us your pertinence.
Hi, I'm Alain Giorla. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a big Skylanders fan, and I created a lot of content for the Slash and Vault, which is a community content program for the Skylanders, as well as a couple on the DM's Guild.
Glorious. And next up, Ryan. Please give us your pertinence.
I'm Ryan. My pronouns are, we'll go with they, them. Some of you may see me on the Onyx Path Twitch channel. I run the behind the screen show on bi-weekly, right? Americans Don't Tend to Use Fortnightly. Bi-weekly
Right.
Tuesday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern, where I just write community content and talk through thought processes and interact and answer questions from chat. I also stream on Twitch as Comrade Bubbles, and I'm a freelance GM for hire and TTRPG writer, budding career and editor.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm doing that thing that I'm really, really bad at where I'm trying to talk and type at the same time.
I can keep going if you want me to.
Somebody said something very nice about me in the chat, and I wanted to thank them. So thank you. Salosinilin, I think, is right. If I murdered that, which you probably did, I apologize. So we're here to discuss community content, specifically with an eye toward the Storypath Nexus, Canis Minor, and the Celerian Vault. And then we'll probably, I'm sure, get into some broader discussions about what, overall the ideas of community content are and things along those lines. We will be fielding questions for the chat. And at the end of the day, I guess, Jack, you probably are the best person to answer the first question that comes to mind for me. Which is, do you feel yet that with like the DM's Guild and with the proliferation of the other community content programs that are run by various publishers at this point, do you feel that we've reached the stage yet where we don't have to start these panels off with what's community content?
Maybe. It depends, I guess, on the system. Like, I know a lot of people know about DM's Guild, but I also get people who have never heard of it. So it's always nice to kind of describe it like community content. If you have a favorite rule system, you can make something for it and sell it to other people who also love that rule system.
Absolutely. And the various community content programs each operate with their own set of rules. So in some instances, for example, you're accessing specifically the rule set, but maybe not certain setting elements or things along those lines, and those are delineated by each publisher. Is that an accurate and fair representation?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
just for ease, D&D Wizards allows certain settings to be used. Basically anything that's come into 5th edition, minus third-party contents, any licensed stuff that they've made.
No Stranger Things.
No Stranger Things. I think Acquisitions Incorporated has a book. No Critical Role.
Right.
Stuff like that. Paizo is very similar with their Pathfinder Infinite, only I think their Lost Omens is their newest setting that they allow. And Chaosium, I think, is kind of fair game. I'm not entirely sure of their like settings and stuff if they have. But yeah, each one kind of has their own little nuances for what you can and can't do, but it allows you to create within that approved IP that they are letting you use without having to get your own special license from them.
Which is cool because you're getting, not only are you getting the system stuff, right, like the mechanics, the crunch, as it were, but you're getting access to the worlds, the fluff, the things.
Yeah.
And some of these pair with additional licenses, like for example, the Sluritian Vaults is Scarred Lands, which is derived from the 5th edition OGL. So one of the conditions of creating a Scarred Lands product is that you're either using the 5th edition OGL or the Pathfinder 1st edition OGL. It just as an example. And so if someone is interested in finding one of these, each of these programs has its own individual FAQ page over at DriveThru. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they should all. Most of them aren't. The DMs Guild one's very deep, whereas some of them are very like more open, so they're not as long and hard to parse all the information. But yeah, they should all have their own little thing that tells you what you can use, how to use it, what any licensing information you need to add into their product.
Cool. Yeah, because there's legalese as well that goes along with that. So, how did, if you don't mind, just sitting in the spotlight for another moment or two, how did you get into that particular relationship with community content? Had you been a creator prior to working at OBS? One book, I say OBS, and people start thinking I'm talking about streaming. One bookshelf, or was there some other way that you kind of got involved?
So it was kind of a other way. I was a moderator for the Dungeons and Dragons like official Twitch channel. And I met people who worked with them with OBS through that. While I also worked with Storytelling Collective, which has programs to help people create content, much of which is usually for community content programs. So they have like a Write Your First Adventure course twice a year, and that helps people to write their own little thing. A lot of people do. We do one for General Path OGL stuff. We have a Chaosium Path for Miskatonic University now, and we have a D&D path. So it just helps them create all through there, and with the goal of publishing their first thing. And through that, I was asked at the beginning of 2020 if I wanted to work part-time, just helping out answering emails and stuff, and I said sure. And then I just really liked it, and was like, you should hire me full-time, and they did.
Nice. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's the outfit that was founded by Ashley Warren and grew from the it used to be
RPG Writer Workshop.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Dora Ashley, amazing carbon-based life form, big fan. Big fan of that program. It's a good way to get involved. And yeah, I think if you what's the website for that?
It's just storytellingcollective.com. Yeah, if you check it out, we have a lot of courses. We have like one specifically for an encounter. It's a very short. We create a collection. Those usually go to like DM's Guild and put everything together for participants. The Write Your First Adventure coming up in July is our big like month long. We have a Discord. People get in and we help, and it's like through our learning core platform. Each day you have like do stuff to do. You can post it up into Discord for other people to kind of comment on, and you just learn how to put everything together from idea to writing to editing to layout and publishing.
Sweet. Yeah. So those of you who have tuned in for looking for insight, that is an amazing program that I would highly recommend looking into. It's a great place to get your feet wet in the process and to learn from people with a lot of experience. So before we dive a little bit, we got a lot of questions firing off in the chat. I see you all. Before we dive in a little bit, I would like to talk a little bit about a couple different approaches that people have taken. We've got the Storytelling Collective is one way to approach it, but I hazard to say that Alain and Ryan have taken different paths to getting into community content. So let's have each of you talk a little bit about how you got started and what brought you into sort of creating on the regular. Do any of you want to jump on that sword first, or should I just pick Pistols at Dawn? How do we want to? I guess Ryan. Let's take that first.
Okay. Remember to unmute my mic, so we're off to a strong start.
Beautiful.
So I mentioned this a couple of times on my show, quite recently actually. When I'm running a game, if it's written down like in a campaign setting or like a module, let's say, I feel like I can't deviate from it, right? Because it's concrete, it's there, it's tangible. So there's always this huge pressure to stick with the established lore of whatever I'm doing. So it's kind of just natural that I fell into writing my own content, and then I've always been a fan of like the original Blue World of Darkness second edition, New World of Darkness book was my first like core book that I bought myself. And then like Scion, I've got fond memories of playing with friends, and short-lived Promethean campaign that was terrible as my first storytelling, first time storytelling, long form story. But it's all like the worlds that are available through role playing just lend themselves to writing your own material for them, right? Because it's a storytelling hobby. There's infinite possibility, many paths, etc. And certainly with specific regards to the Story Path Nexus and Solution Vault and Realms of Pokemon, Canis Minor, I write in my downtime for fun, but it was like 150 weeks ago, like 3 years, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah. I actually responded to a call from Matthew Dawkins about just reviews for Onyx Path products, because I used to run a tabletop blog where I'd review things and write articles about stuff. Please don't look for it. It's shockingly old and outdated. And I have improved so much since then. But I never actually ended up doing that, because I pitched something that I'd started doing on my own personal Twitch channel to Matthew and Travis, and was like, I could just write content on stream if people are interested in that rather than reviewing. And it kind of just continued from there. And having the dedicated time slot every 2 weeks to write content is a boon, let's say. It's definitely a time intensive hobby / career.
Well, and if I can ask a question before we dive into audience questions, I have a follow-up for that. How do you find in terms of, because I know that your show, you wind up with a pretty long tail on a lot of your projects. You'll work a particular release for several episodes.
Yeah.
Prior to moving on to the next concepts and the next idea. How do you find that affects your creative process? Do you find it easier or harder to be writing in sort of these intensive fortnightly bursts?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I try to remember to point this out every couple of streams or so, but the show is an artificially extended process, because I am talking to chat and things like that. But I don't know. It gives me an opportunity to do stuff that I wouldn't necessarily do when I'm doing like writing for myself, because I do that as well, because I have to. But because I'm, because I set out explicitly to explain my thought processes and why I'm doing things certain ways, it gives me that time to reflect whilst I'm talking about what I'm doing and make a better product for it. Like anyone who sat through my towards the end of the previous series of the show, when I was doing the People of the Snow for Scarred Lands for the Frostlands of Fen release, I'd spent about half an hour stuck on the wording of one sentence, which I might not necessarily do if I'm doing it to myself. I'd write it so I know roughly what it's supposed to say, and then move on, and then come back to it. But because I was doing it live, I wanted to kind of show why wording is important. But then, so I mean, I started writing that when Fen Relic was released, and that was November of like the year before.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
But then contrast that with the Horizon Initiative thing that I did for Aberrant when Aberrant was made available on Nexus, and you were like, "Hey, do any of the content creators want to write for want to put out community content for launch?" And I turned that around in about 3 days.
Right.
I mean, it's not a terribly long document, but it's 3 days versus the like. I think I average about 12 to 14 episodes a season.
Yeah.
And then that's just first draft. And then it takes obviously a couple of hours of editing and a couple of hours of layout after that.
Right. Because I know there is a little bit of the the craft of refinement that you don't do on stream necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely
that's not
wants to watch
fun
an
to
editor
watch.
editing.
Yeah, it's just there's nothing engaging there about like, oops, I had a typo.
I mean, some people might, because I do end up screaming at Word occasionally, like when I'm doing layout, because I don't have Adobe. I do all my layouts in Word, which thank you to everyone at Onyx Path who puts the Word layouts together, the Word templates together. But then there's an errant line return somewhere that's messing up my entire formatting, and it takes half an hour to find, and I'm just in tears, just pouring at the computer screen trying to fix it.
Remind me to get you an Adobe for your birthday or something. But well, and I guess to shift just a bit along, how would you say you came to the community content process?
Yes, so back in the days of the first edition of the Scarlands, so it was around 2005, it was for D&D third edition. I've written a lot of homebrew material for the Scarlands for a fan website. It was in French at the time. And so when D&D 5e came, I thought that it was a good exercise to take that material and update it to the 5th edition, translate it to English as well, because I didn't have the French version of 5e at the time, and streamline it a little bit because half of it at least was bad. So I had that sitting on my drive, and it was quite fun to write. And when Onyx Path decided to open the Slash Vault, I thought that it was a perfect opportunity to publish that material on the vault. So I packaged it into small supplements, and that was the first editions of my Gelspad Companion series. And after a while, I was so I finished updating all the materials that I have from my previous run of the Scarlands, and I found it so fun to write for the Slash and Wolves that I just continued and made more.
That's awesome. And have expanded quite a bit, touched into some collaborative, I guess, sort of a secondary level of collaboration that some publishers may engage in. Onyx Path, to a degree, like many of the, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jack, but many of the community content programs are somewhat hands-offish. They're put into place by the publisher, and they're left to sort of their own devices to maintain. They're really the publisher's not particularly aren't always farming for new material in those projects per se, right? Is that a fair assessment to say that they're not always sort of trying to direct people that direction, or getting directly involved in the creations? I would say Onyx Path tends to be a little bit more approachable in that regard, particularly if you have a high scope project. And this is a little different. One thing I know with DM's Guild, depending on when you're talking about, there are or are not methods to getting a print on demand if you approach early, things like that, which is also the case with Storypath Nexus, Flourishing Vault, and Canis Minor to a lesser degree, but those are possibilities. But also, like Frostlands of Fenrir, like for example, was a concept that I pitched to Onyx Path specifically for something that would be originated from a community content program, right? It's not a official release. It did not go through the official channels to release, but it is an unlock of an entire continent and an unlock of another aspect of the Storytion Vault program that wasn't open yet. And you did a similar thing with Dalmatia. Is that fair to say, as you were putting Dalmatia together?
Yeah, in a way, it's a kind of subsetting of the Skylands that explores notably the past before the Divine War, and in particular the halfling culture, which is not really explored in the official books. And so with that book, you get two ways of approaching that topic. The first way is to plug it into your existing Skylands campaign and see how you can reclaim that heritage or help halfling reclaim their heritage, or you can go into the past and see what it was before the Divine War, when Titans roam the earth, and you have a plethora of different periods to choose with different themes that you can tackle, notably tyranny and oppression, but also preparation for the Divine War and exploration of time magic. And you get also other alternative campaign ideas that you can to cross the two different periods, so past and present. So for example, with time travel, or with alternative timelines and imaginary worlds. So it's so yeah, if someone wants to expand on that idea, it would be awesome.
It is really cool, and one of the things that drew me to it, and I'm very excited about Dalmatia, is the idea of delving into a culture in the Scarred Lands that is presented in the official material as this culture that in many ways they're a diaspora who have had their own history just buried. Like halflings don't know half of their own history. It's just been overrun by colonialism and tyranny. And so being able to, I'm a big fan of designing in the narrative spaces that are left in the wake of those things and going back in and answering those questions. So I think it's very cool to see people doing that kind of work on the vault.
Sorry, I don't have a phone number.
I'm not talking to you, Siri, but thank you. I appreciate it. I don't even know where she got that from. I don't think I said anything even rhymed with it. But before we get too off topic on rambling about my phone, we do have some audience questions I would like to touch base on. So first up is, how are y'all doing today? So Ryan, how are you doing today?
As I said in chat when Zach posted, anxious, very anxious. I mean, obviously I had a great time the last time I was on one of these panels, but that was 2 years ago now. And it's just, yeah, it was. Time flies.
Tempest do be fugiting.
That's a new phrase, but I like it. Just happy to be here, let's say.
I'm glad that you're doing fine and happy to be here. Alain, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. It's getting a bit late here, and I noticed last time that I did something like that, I started losing my English around halfway through the show. So hopefully today I won't be that concerned about that.
I'll just nod and start pretending I understand French. It'll be fine.
Oui.
Jack, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Made some granola and watched the Xbox Game Showcase. So I saw some Starfield footage, and that was pretty cool.
And as for me, as Faith would say, I am 5 by 5.
Yeah.
So next is, may I have some advice on making big books all by myself? I'll let each of you sort of pop in on your thoughts on this. My advice would be don't do that. Start small, make something tiny. If you really want to have a big book, break it up into itty bitty sections, and then later make it a big. And Jack can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that's also the type of thing where you might be able to, if you were doing, say, a Dungeon Masters Guild, you might be able to say like, "Hey, I've done this series of 10 small releases. I would like to compile it and do a POD," and that might be the type of thing they would be open to discussing. That would be within the realm of approachability, right? Same thing goes for Story Path Nexus, Canis Minor, Solution Vault. If you build something, if you look at the first POD product that was done for Sluritian Vault was Vengeance of the Shunned, if I'm not misremembering that, which was effectively like 8 adventures that had been individually released by people and then compiled. So my advice to you would be don't make a big book by yourself. Any thoughts on that? Oh?
Yeah, so I made 2 of these big books, and one of them was indeed a compilation of smaller books, and that works really great. Notably because you don't have to do all it in one go. And the other one, I did it at a moment when I didn't have a lot of time, a lot of work to do at my day job. So I had a lot of time, and I wrote the whole thing in just 1 month, and not doing much apart from that. So it's not always the case that you can find that amount of time. So yeah, my advice would be to cut it into smaller pieces if you can.
Absolutely. I agree with your assessment 100%. Jack, what do you think? You've probably seen the most like field data. Like give us your the wide perspective of it.
My advice is the same, is that it's a big project, and it's gonna, if you set out to do something that big, you're gonna end up doing nothing, because it's gonna be overwhelming. The bigger books that we do have come from people who've made a lot of stuff. I think the bigger ones they're collaborative. There are a bunch of people working together to make something. I think the biggest one is the Monster Manual Expanded, but that's just monster stat blocks. So it's kind of easier to break that up, for the creator to break that up and create one and then compile them all together.
Right. And that's been around for some time. Well, right. Like, has there been a new iteration of that?
3 of them at this point. Okay. Yeah. And I think currently the creator Dragonix is in the process of updating the first one. So going back to it and updating all the stat blocks and adding new artwork and stuff. So
yeah,
but yeah, they're hefty tomes. Yeah. So like the bigger books that I've seen are usually collaborative works. If you really want to make your first thing a really big book, setting out goals for hitting like smaller parts, like breaking it up, but like being like, I want to be able to have the beginning part done, and not trying not to see it as a bigger thing at once, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed. It happens a lot when people write for the storytelling collectives, the Write Your First Adventure. They start small and it ends up getting so big that they can't finish it. And I think that's where a lot of people want to make a big book, because they've just written so much, and more or less you can usually make a small book out of what you have already.
Yeah, it's the potential for scope creep, as we call it, in certain aspects of the biz is pretty simple, or pretty easy to hit. Mm-hmm. You can wind up very quickly doubling, tripling what you expected the length of a book to be, just as you start detailing things, as you start play testing, as you start running into narrative questions that players are asking. Oh, why doesn't this thing do this thing? I guess I better work that into the book. Well, now you've just added 5 pages to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where like coming up with a clear plan and not deviating it from the beginning, you can create something bigger and not make your scope so astronomical that you'll never end up making the book at all.
Yeah, I used to despise outlining, and I'm very grateful to my developers, editors, and all the good folks at Onyx Path for reinforcing the need to do that well, because now it's a tool that I use repeatedly. But like at first, when I first started freelancing, I had a very hard time working in outline.
Yeah,
so I wasn't used to doing it.
It's a big part of like pre-writing is very important. All the stuff you do before you really sit down to write is just as important as actually writing the thing. And knowing how you're going to get all that stuff done before you even start helps keep it all attainable.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that covers kind of the basics of that question. I hope that answered the question. Another question specifically.
May I just?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you have more, by all means.
No, that's fine. My route to writing a big book was Patreon. I decided to write a campaign setting and convinced a small number of people to pay me a regular monthly amount, and it means that you force yourself to set aside the writing time. And trust me when I say you don't realize how much you've written till it comes to compiling it.
Oh yeah.
I'm at like 150 plus pages at this point, and that's without art. That's just text. So there you go. That's another way of doing it.
Yeah, and in fact, to piggyback off of that, that's what I've been doing with my Patreon pretty much since it started, and it has yielded 2 setting releases basically, and about to be a 3rd setting release that have just been me compiling the things that I'm putting out as Patreon exclusives, and then eventually saying, oh well, all this stuff fits together well enough to do a compilation of adventures. Oh look, I made a whole OSR game. I guess I'll put that out for the public now. That's how Odysseys and Overlords was born, was through doing bits here and there on Patreon. So that's another good way to. You also then teach yourself a little bit of the discipline that you need, right? I need to write every month so that I can hit this thing. And if I don't do that, then people who are giving me money are going to be sad, and I don't want them to be sad.
It's also a really good way of learning how much you can write in a day comfortably without, burnout, which allows you to then further plan your writing.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So moving on to the next question. Does Jack's presence imply a future storytelling collective track for the Story Path Nexus, Canis Minor, or Sluritian Vault?
It's
I wasn't told if it does.
All that stuff is above me. I just do a lot of administrative work for them, and help on the back end with one bookshelf stuff. But it's possible. And we also have a general path that it kind of rips all of the rules stuff out and replaces it with general. You could use it for any system. So there is a path for if you want to write for whatever community content program, it will still help you get to publishing.
Yeah, it's to the best of my knowledge, there's no like partnership planned or anything along those lines. But I don't know that any party involved would necessarily be opposed to the discussion. But that's above my pay grade. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I would recommend again. I haven't engaged with that program since the rebrand, but I can't imagine it isn't as awesome as it was. You know what I mean?
If anything, it's gotten a lot bigger.
Right. Yeah. There's more people that are adding more good ideas to it. So I would highly recommend. I think it's fair to say that a significant portion of what's being done through there is probably 5e related. It would be safe to say. So it's not a far stretch to get into Canis Minor or Sluritian Vault from. You're gonna know a lot of people who know those basic mechanics.
We have a general path for any system, and there is a OGL specific path. So not a D&D specific path, but just a 5e, any 5e related system path.
Yes, I mean that would dovetail very well for Celebration Vault especially, but also for Canis Minor. And then, you know, Story Path Nexus, you just come watch Ryan's show. That's all you need.
There you go.
Oh, do you put them? No, I don't like being perceived. Don't perceive me.
So here's a question for the room, and this time we'll start you off with Ryan, and I'll just go around the other direction. Do you have a favorite game line to write community content for?
Oh gosh, the one that I'm currently writing is the kind of default cop-out answer. Not really. I mean, it kind of depends what I feel like doing, because obviously the mechanics of a game very much influence the style of material that you write. So like Story Path, for example, with Scion and Trinity, I can write pretty much anything that I want to write, and it'll kind of sort of make sense. Like I'm doing horror stuff for a game that isn't a horror game right now because I want it to, and I can. But then if I just want to write something that's more mechanically concise and streamlined, I'll go for, which I guess formal public release, the next season of the show will be Canis Minor material, because I want to do some streamlined OGL stuff. So yeah, I'll do that. And then if I want the crunch, Scarred all the way.
Love it. Alone? I bet I could guess.
Yeah, I think it's quite easy to tell it's the Scarlands. I have planned to write for some of They Came From game when they will become available for the Story Path Nexus, I imagine. But it's just plans at the moment.
I absolutely cannot wait to see your take on anything They Came From.
Yeah, that's a day one purchase.
Absolutely, 100%. And so much, such a fun world to play in. Yeah. And I'm going to derail this for just a second to once again reiterate, because I've said it like 3 times this week, and I'm going to say it again. I still think They Came From the Cyclops' Cave might be my favorite role playing. Because I got to play a skull-faced villain who said, "Trust the power of friendship" on a stream, and that's all I ever wanted out of life. I can now die a happy man.
That's a T-shirt right there. Just get that made.
Yeah.
It was a definite like watershed moment for me. So how about you, Jack? I know, Jack, you don't do a whole lot of writing per se, right? But I guess to tweak it a little bit, do you have a favorite game line that you like to see what's coming up from? I imagine you to see a lot of stuff that's
I see a
through.
lot. I actually do all the product approvals for Drive-Thru RPG, so I see all the new products that are coming out that are from small publishers, and it's always really fun to like stumble across something that's just like, this is super cool, I can't believe this exists. But I also will dive into different creator, like community content programs, and just see what communities are coming up with. And it's really cool to just see that like there's so many different adventure types and the stories that people come up with. There's so many. I've been really in awe of Miskatonic University right now, just because of how popular they are in Korea.
Yeah, I saw that there's like a lot of stuff coming out in the Korean language, which is super cool to see.
It jumps up to like some of the hottest titles on the website. So that's just really interesting that it's apparently Call of Cthulhu is huge in South Korea.
Well, I know it's the most popular role-playing game in Japan, so I guess it might just be that side of Asia.
Yeah, I think that whole area probably really likes that style.
You think about it, it's all coastal, right?
Yeah.
You know, you walk outside, you're in the world. You can smell sea breeze as you're running your game, so that tracks, I guess. I have no idea if that's actually why they like. I don't.
But yeah, I like a lot of the community content stuff that's come out.
That's awesome. And one of the things that I imagine you get to see a lot of, especially, is the idea of how far you can bend some of these settings or rules, the wacky things that people come up with. The things that are like, that doesn't track at all. Like, you wouldn't expect that, but all of a sudden I want it now.
Yeah.
Because it's such a fresh, unique perspective on that. So like that to me, I would imagine would be a very cool thing to be able to witness in your position.
Mhm.
As for me, it's a funny question. Probably, honestly, Scarred Lands, because I have, I get to cheat a little bit in that I have a very unique perspective on. I know like what we're not probably going to be touching on officially, so I get to go in and play in those areas, and I'm like, I know that Rich will
You
never
can
let
tell
me
that
do a
at some
book.
point.
Yeah. I know I will never get to do this, so I might as well do it here. But also, I've had a lot of fun. Honestly, like out of all the community content stuff that I've had a hand in creating, the two I'm most proud of are probably both DM's Guild titles, which is Yearning to Breathe Free, because it was a lot of fun, and I had no idea how prescient it was going to be about certain things when I put it out. Like it was very much done as a protest about American immigration, and then it just turned into a much bigger um, protest about the universe. And then there was a collection of adventures that Bia Diaz and I put together for Ravnica called the Felicity Triskelion collection, I guess, I think is what it's called now. Started out as a trilogy and wound up being 8 episodes because we found out we had more story. But that was a lot of fun to work on as well. Getting to play around in Ravnica. So I hope that answered the question because I know that I get rambly too. Let's see. What do you think makes a good cover? It asks specifically for Chronicles of Darkness or a Scion product, but I think this is just kind of a general overall. Like, do you have any? What do you think makes a good cover? And do you have any overall branding advice? And let's go the opposite way again. Alain, what do you think? You have a beautiful cover behind you, so
Yeah.
you would be a person to ask.
I think I suck at making a good cover.
I disagree, but go on.
But here is what I'm trying to do when I'm making cover, is I'm trying to make the title readable from the picture on Drive-Thru RPG. When it is a very small picture, you need to still read the title on that at that scale. And that means placing it in a place of the making sure that the background color doesn't clash too much with the color of the text, and also that the text is large enough. So yeah, so 2 things that catch the eye, it's that the title, and also a good image, or a color that differs from other products in the game line. For example, my Onyx Path Companion series have this very bright golden cover that really contrast with all the other products in the Salarian Vault. So really that directs the eye of the consumer, if I can say that, to hopefully at least click on the product and maybe buy it.
Beautiful. I think that's very solid advice, Ryan. Any thoughts to add to or expand on that?
Yeah, definitely just what Alain said. Particularly font choice. If you like, obviously it helps to look official with the fonts that the game line uses in general. But like my partner is dyslexic, so I run most of my titles by her just so that she can read make sure that it's clear. But it's also to like, because I don't just want to repeat what Alan said. The image choice, or if you're using a texture in place of an image, can tell you a lot about the adventure, or not about the document, let's say, because it's might not be an adventure. But also, if you're finding that the image that you've chosen for your title page or the texture isn't working with the branding colors you're working with, or with the font, I've definitely run into places where I'm like, I really, really want to use this picture, and I spend like half an hour trying to get it so I can read everything clearly, and then just have to accept that the picture's going to have to go, and have a backup picture in mind. If you Onyx Path's great with all of the art that they put out for use for community content, and huge thanks to that, because I don't have an art budget, but it can also be a bit limiting. So it's that kind of teaching you to to assess based on limited resources and make the best decision you possibly can, rather than being like, this title is not right, I'm going to spend, I don't know, $50 on custom art just for this one product, and that's a risk, and only you can make that decision. But the art that Onyx Path provide in most cases is really going to be good enough for most products.
It is really good. They do an amazing job of it. I mean, most once an art pack is released, that you will find that is generally, with few exceptions, the majority of, if not all of, the art for the books that pack covers, which is very generous of them. And Jack, you see a lot of cover art. So what would be your sort of quick from the hip, make a good cover advice to folks?
Quick from the hip, the drive-through RPG does have like some product standards guidelines, but it really is just how to make a good looking cover. And like everybody said, like making sure that your title is readable in that space is good, but also something that makes people want to click on the image and blow it up to make it bigger. So that could be art. It could be something like text that describes the title more. Just something that makes people want to look at it more interestingly. Art is always good on a cover. The titles that do the best are gonna have nice covers. There are interesting products that, especially like on DM's Guild, that are just kind of the text blocks from the inside of a D&D book.
Right.
And they might be really interesting product, but nobody's really going to click on it. And so just any kind of cover is going to help, as long as it's, not a white box with the title on and in black, something to make people kind of just like look at it for a extra second, because it's really hard. That's their first of everything. So yeah,
there is a lot of especially in that particular marketplace, it seems there's a lot of like, you have to window shopping, right? You are trying to take advantage of some people's window shopping, and the best way to do that is an engaging cover. The other thing I would recommend is just do a little bit of Googling about composition and color theory. And these are not complicated. Like, you say those words and people's eyes glaze over, but it's not complicated stuff. This is real easy things. And I tell you, I've been publishing in one form or another for 2 decades, and I still bring up a color wheel frequently when I'm working on like a cover and things like that, because those are the kinds of things that, having a visual reference point, it matters. Framing matters. If making sure your cover is adhering to your rule of thirds matters. These are the kinds of things that, even if you haven't studied them, you recognize when they're wrong. You can tell when you look at a picture and say, oh, that person doesn't have enough headroom, that person has too much headroom. You don't maybe use that terminology in your head, but you absolutely clock that as being wrong and off. And people are less likely to click on something that they think is wrong or off, unless you can make it wrong or off in an interesting way.
And somebody brought up the art packs and stuff, and that's the biggest thing, is people think they need to spend a lot of money on art, and it's like there are a bunch of artists on drive-through who just sell their art as stock art, and for really low prices, like $2 or free. Sometimes they just give it away. It can take a lot of time to kind of dig through all that to find something you like, but that's probably going to be worth it in the end.
And I would say that the search function is your friend in that regard. And I don't know how much you are able to, either A, out of personal knowledge, or B, because of various rules. How much can you say about what the search function has in store coming up with the redesign of the website? Do we know how that's
I don't know. I know that it will be better, but the specifics is all the engineers stuff. So I get told a lot of the stuff the same time everybody else gets told about it.
That's fair.
I know that it will be better utilized to be able to find more granular stuff, filters, so yeah, I know that it can be kind of frustrating right now.
Sure. I mean, and truth be told, I mean, that site is 15, 16 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
The redesign is exciting and one might say a little overdue. So it's good to see it's trucking along, and I'm excited about the possibilities that it unleashes. So we're bumping up against time here, but we do have one more question I want to sneak in, which is one of the questions I think we get every time we talk about this in a public space, which is how do you recommend pricing? And let's start that one off with Alain. Why not? What do you think of pricing? Do you have a pricing rhythm that you use? Do you have a method to your pricing, or do you just sort of guess?
I generally start with a base price of 10 cents per page, and then I bump that up depending on how much art I had to get for that product, or whether I had some editing done by someone else or layout done by someone else. And then I try to compare it with other titles in the same space, and so trying to check with similar page count, and then I try to adjust compared to what I think how my products compare to that to these.
It's kind of more like a side by side comparison to what else is in that market at that time. Right, fair to say.
Yeah.
Ryan, how about you?
I mean, I mentioned I dimly remember answering this question last time I was on. I know that I undervalue my work, but mostly it's like by feel, by gut instinct. So I mentioned the Horizon Initiative earlier. That one was, I think, about 8 pages, 10 pages, something like that. So that's like $2.50. And then anything above 12 pages, I generally charge it's like $5, because I don't write terribly long documents, because mostly they're for the show, right? So I have that finite fixed length that I'm worried that if I write too much, people won't watch. But if it's for a specific purpose, like if it's for an introductory game, like an introductory adventure, where it's designed to intro people to the game by the title, that's generally pay what you want, because I don't want people to have that, like the rulebooks. I understand why they're expensive, but rulebooks are expensive. And then if people want to play the game and they've already got the books, but might not be able to afford, so with Scion, because that was the first one I wrote, A Rude Awakening is free, but I know that obviously A Light Extinguished has a small price attached to it.
Yeah, it's like a book.
Obviously, I mean, you get the rules with A Light Extinguished, which you don't get with A Rude Awakening. But I just don't want that. I just want to remove as many barriers as I possibly can. So that's why most of my products are probably far cheaper than they should be. But equally, I just use the art that comes with them. I don't buy art. Because I just want to show people how easy it is to write for community content, right, without having to have the art contacts or whatnot.
It's not so much like a big investment. There's not a lot of overhead to recoup. So
yeah, it's just my time.
All right, cool. And Jack, I know that there's data that OBS has crunched on this. But what would you recommend? Do you have a rhythm you'd recommend, or do you believe more in just kind of like hitting the points, the kind of peak price points?
So if you're just starting, it's totally fine to release things as free or pay what you want. As I always say, it's more important at a cadence of releases. So where if you start to release things and you have kind of a style that your covers always take, we have a lot of people that make covers that look similar, where people are going to start noticing like, oh, this person's released another thing, and then you release another thing a week later and a week later. Eventually you start to build that customer base on those couple of free titles you've done. Then you can kind of start charging a little bit. And that's, like the others have said, it's kind of a personal thing. Like, you don't want to undervalue your work, but you don't want to price out people where they don't want to then spend the money on it. So it's kind of, you use those free and pay what you want titles to kind of advertise for your newer stuff. and each title can then advertise for your previous stuff as you've added a price to it. Also, adding a price to it allows the site, drive through, DMs Guild, what have you, to be included into sales and things. Pay what you want, and free titles don't really get that spotlight. So even having it as 99 cents, you can price everything at 99 cents. Then you can create bundles. That's the other thing is using bundles, using those promotion tools to kind of package your stuff up into like a nice little like $5 package of 20 titles that you've created over however long is a big seller for small community content.
Absolutely. And in my experience, couple things that I've tried and I've also seen it work with other people. I have a title right now over at DMs Guild that's Hunters in the Mists. It's a new Blood Hunter order for every Dread domain that's listed in Van Richten. And I started it off with, I think, 10 orders in it for $1.99. And I just said right in the description of the title, this is a work in progress. Every time I add a new thing, I'm going to up the cover price.
Yep.
So hop in and get it now, and then you'll get those free updates. So that's another way that you can sort of mix and match these things, right? Like you can say, like, okay, I'm going to start off with a low cover price as a small digestible product. I'm just going to expand it, and as I expand it, I'll ramp that cover price up. Then you're recouping some costs. You can try a couple different mixes and matches that work. Pay what you want, I find, is extremely useful for excerpts and previews, and if you have, for example, let's say you do a dungeon that's 5 chapters, you put chapter 1 out as a pay what you want title, and then you're getting all of the people that are just grabbing it because, and half of those people might not even ever open it, but the half that do, half of them might look at it and say, oh, I really want this when the full version hits, or I really want to go check that full version out. And now you've got a sale out of a thing that is really just a repackaging of material you've already made. But at the end of the day, you're using it as an ad or a promo or a gift or a thank you. Things along those lines. So those would be some things I would recommend. We have gone effectively over our time at this point. But I will have strong words with whoever's in charge of the scheduling of this convention. That's me. But I really just wanted to take a moment to thank you all so much for taking the time to be here, and thank everyone who has tuned in for the panel. All of your great questions. I greatly appreciate them. I greatly appreciate everyone who has been at this convention this year. It's been 10 years of Onyx Path. I have had the good fortune of being here for a couple of those years. I love the family. I love the community. I love everybody involved with this. And I'm really grateful and looking forward to the next 10. Before we run off, do we have any final thoughts, words, things you would like to promote, something you would like to share, anything along those lines before we run away, Ryan?
2 things. One, I guess I'll get the better thing out of the way. If anyone is interested in writing community content, obviously I mentioned that my show exists. That goes up onto my YouTube channel, which is just Comrade Bubbles on YouTube, and it's called Behind the Screen. But it's community content. You don't have to write it yourself. Like I've done work with Travis and Alain, and it's incredible watching a project kind of come together.
Get some friends and build something with your buddies. It's the way to do it for sure. Just have, I would recommend everybody have a nice 1-sheet document between you that says we will each get X percentage of these words, and bang, you're done. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to agree with your statement.
So
continue.
I was just gonna then do shameless self plug. If you do have any further questions like the ones you've been asking in chat, which we have been seeing, unfortunately we ran out of time. I'm always happy to talk about this kind of thing on Twitter, where it's at Comrade Bubbles. It's the thing beneath my face. My Twitter timeline is mostly self promotion for TTRPG, and then I try to be visible about I'm non-binary and mental health and stuff.
And we appreciate your visibility too. You're awesome, and I don't get to tell you enough face to face how much of an asset you are to the channel. So thank you very much for being
thank
part
you.
of the
I hope
Onyx Path family.
I always hope to bring some value to the channel because it's a weird concept for a show.
You always do, and I'm glad that you're able to be here. Thank you for. Alain, how about you? What do you got? Anything you'd like to share with class? Final thoughts?
So final thought is that it's a community, and as Ryan said, so don't hesitate to reach out to other people and see what you can build with them, or simply take what they have done and expand upon it and use it in your own projects. I find it's a very fulfilling way to build a world with the community that way. Yeah, that's my final thought.
I agree, and I would also like to piggyback on that and just point out, speaking only at least for myself and probably for any other writer who's ever done community content, at the risk of overstepping by speaking for everyone in the industry, but I love it when somebody takes an idea that I have put in the world and finds something fun to go run with it. So if you ever are reading like a community content thing I've done, I don't care what program it is, and you're like, I would like to do a follow-up to this, and you tweet me, ask me questions about it, I would love to see that happen. It's the most flattering thing in the universe as far as I'm concerned.
We'll second that wholeheartedly.
Do that. That's another easy way in, is to talk to somebody who's already done something. Be like, I love what you did on this. How can I do an adventure using these 3 monsters? I almost guarantee you, whoever you ask is going to have a bunch of help for you all of a sudden. So,
or a bunch of unused documents that were like, I don't have time to work on this, but you can, sure, do the work.
You handle my light work. But yeah, so that's another very important aspect about it being a community for sure. And Jack, any final thoughts? Any last things you wanted to spread the word about, or just general button-ups?
Yeah, so like everybody said about community is the best part. You can join. Drive-Thru has an official Discord. It's super easy to join now. There should be a little button up at the top when you log in. That's the Discord logo. If you click that, you'll get an invite link, and then you can do all that. And there's tons of people on there. The publisher reps are on there. I'm on there. We'll answer questions. You can always email me at jack.kiser@onebookshelf.com. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find somebody who does. Yeah, the Storytelling Collective, Write Your First Adventures, coming up in July. Follow us on Twitter, Storytelling COL, for updates on that. You can join our newsletter from our website. There's going to be we have a lot of really good like creative courses. We do a lot of free challenges and stuff, writing challenges and things throughout the year. You can follow me at Jack's Not Funny on Twitter. I can reach out to me there too. I don't tweet a lot. I mostly just use it to look at like professional wrestling and sneakers and dumb stuff. I'm not too huge on the Twitters. But yeah, it's been really fun. Been great to meet all of you, and
it's been very cool to put a face to the name, because we've interacted on Twitter a lot and on emails, I think, a few times. And if I recall properly, most of those were nice. So
yeah.
I'm getting too gray in the beard for angry emails with Drive-Thru anymore. And that's my parting thought. Don't send angry emails to Drive-Thru. Always be kind when you're dealing with professionals, because they are all people like Jack who have lives, and you should be nice to them if you have an issue that you need resolved. Because you get more flies with honey or something along those lines. I don't know. It's Sunday, and I'm out of wisdom. That was the last nugget I could wring out. From here on out, it's just me getting stoned and drooling. So everybody have a wonderful, productive, fun rest of your convention. Hang around here in about 20 minutes or so for the closing ceremonies, and then run over as quickly as you can to Drive-Thru RPG and pick up all of the beautiful things that are on sale as part of the weekend's festivities. A lot of the PDFs from Onyx Path, particularly community content stuff, is half off, and you can get Peoples of the Crossroads Continent for 90% off. So that's 12 new playable peoples, a bunch of new backgrounds, and a lot of history on that setting for 50 cents. And the new adventure, Down in the Hole, just came out in advanced PDF on Wednesday. We've been playing through that on the Pathcast, been a lot of fun. So check that out as well. And those are Crossroads Continent is a 5e OGL setting as well. So thank you all so much for being here. Stick around. We'll see you at the closing ceremonies. Until then, wear masks, wash your hands, be good to yourselves and each other, and vaccinate. We'll see you soon.